we'll switch it over to Ashley. We'll jump right into our agenda.
Okay. Welcome everyone to tonight's space. I'm going to invite everyone into a comfortable way to be in your body. And so as you do that, just keep your gaze away from the screen. And you may choose to sit up, you may choose to turn away from the screen, but begin to find a comfortable space for you. And then as you shift and get settled, I'm going to invite everyone just to either close their eyes or find a comforting, grounded focal point. And so as we come into this moment together tonight as a community and conversation and dialogue, let's invite awareness to how we're showing up. And so as we simply check in, not trying to change anything, simply checking in with how we're showing up, begin to allow yourself to notice your physical body, noticing the soles of the feet, the limbs to the crown of the head, and simply ask, how am I physically at this moment? Our experience is not to shift, simply to notice. And as you allow yourself to begin to draw awareness to your mind, body, your thoughts, noticing what is present for me. What am I thinking about at this moment? And as you bring your awareness to your mind, simply notice. If a thought needs to stay, allow it. If a thought may need to shift, simply bring your awareness here. And then I'm going to invite your awareness to your breath. Noticing that it's there. And as you notice the breath, on your next exhale, begin to shift your awareness to your heart space, also known as our emotional body. And just check in, how am I in my heart space? How do I feel at this moment? Understanding that we may be experiencing a multifacet of emotions and all are valid and real. Bringing awareness back to your breath. Begin to notice its quality. And I invite you to simply take deeper and longer breath to begin to ground you into this space, into this time together. And then now we'll shift our awareness to our intellectual body. So based on what you simply observed to how you're showing up, notice what needs to stay in the space to begin to listen and to share, to give and to receive. And as you bring your awareness back to your breath, I invite you to allow the breath to guide you back into the virtual space. And then in your own time, as we each enter into this space and into community, as you gather, I invite you just to maybe share how you're feeling, maybe in the chat box, if there's anything that's present for you that may be helpful to enter into this space, noticing that that's simply an option. And so we'll have a minute just to offer space for that.
How do you view your role during this movement?
That's an interesting question. I guess as a legislator, I'm looking, I guess whatever policies that can come out of this, I'm trying my best to hear. I know that our communities are frustrated and angry and just tired of continuously seeing Black men in general killed by the police at record paces every year. So I know there's a lot of frustration in particular in the Black community. And so I'm trying to hear through and out of the frustration, you know, of the community, and to see what we can do to just make sure that we are creating policies and laws that will minimize this,
Yeah.
minimize brutality in the police force. But also, it's not just about police. It's about economic equality. It's about equality in schools and all that stuff. So this gives us an opportunity to, try to fix some wrongs.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Now, if I'm correct, you already introduced some legislation, or you've already talked about standing up a community review board.
Yeah. So last Tuesday, there were a couple of things that I proposed to my colleagues, and the first one was whether you call it a citizen review board, civilian review board. Either way, I don't know. It looks like I went off of the screen. Did I?
You're back.
Oh, okay. All right. Citizens Review Board or Civilian Review Board, CRBs are what they're called. And so I did ask my colleagues for us to begin the conversation to review that. And I'm not really sure where that's going to go, but I'm crossing my fingers that there's enough support in the community that it seems like we can make that happen. Second thing I asked, and this is purely a symbolic thing, but it makes a difference. There's a recreation center in my district, Confederate Hills, and we have proposed to change that name. I do have full support of the board for that. So you'll hear more about that tomorrow. The name will change, so we're excited about that. Also, I've asked for us to review policies that are maybe out of date and be able to deal with physical intimidation and force that is unwarranted and is not, that we don't train our officers to do. So that's 3 or 4 things. Also, yesterday, Chairman Cooper and I and Pastor Lance Watson organized a pretty large march and rally in Eastern Henrico. And out of that came quite a bit of ASK of the local, state, and national governments. I don't want to get into that, but we've been trying to focus on this moment, not just in emotion, but also letting that guide us in policy.
Yes, indeed. And I appreciate you sharing that. I think a lot of times you look at legislators and you see the role that you all have,
Right.
but then it's also that community voice that's just as important.
Yes,
what's interesting with our students being out of school, they've been active in they've been doing civic engagement.
Right.
I was at the rally also yesterday and saw a wealth of teachers, leadership, students who were there and really participating in some of the things that they would traditionally learn about in a classroom. And I heard you talk about the ask, and I know you won't get into too much detail, but just from your perspective as a legislator, if students, community members are interested in getting more involved, what would you suggest that they do?
So a lot of it is the civic part. First of all, I do want to shout out Henrico County Public Schools for the major support yesterday. The first thing I want to do is, and I know it's about action, but I think sometimes people get scared. The Henrico County Public School Board actually put out a statement yesterday, and just simply seeing Henrico County Public School and the school board say that Black Lives Matter. Say it, put it down. It really made me feel good on yesterday. So I want to shout out the school board for not being afraid of saying black, the word black.
Yes.
I think it starts there.
Yes.
And so I seen principals and students and all of that yesterday. I would challenge all of us to try to be as engaged as possible in the local process. We need to do a better job in getting the words out, informing the citizens of what's going on. But I'm challenging you as citizens, residents of Henrico County, to try to be engaged on the local level and making sure that you are doing what you can to find out what's going on, and then pressing your local legislators, your state legislators, your congresspersons on what it is that you think are inequities and what it is that you think should be happening in your local communities.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. I have one more question for you. And this was actually a question that someone emailed earlier, a concern that they had. And I think you could speak to it
Right.
just in your role at Board of Supervisors. And if you don't mind, I want to just read the email,
No, no, that's
as is. And so he says, I grew up in Henrico and went to schools out here. My son is a student in Henrico County. I've seen the differences between the West End schools and the East End schools, and it's sickening how different they are. The West End schools have all new everything, while the East End schools get the scraps. And why is that? Because the West End schools are majority white, and the East End schools are majority Black. But like I said, now all of a sudden you all care about the Black community. It goes on and on. And so this was the email that we got, and I think this conversation comes up often about just resource allocation, who gets what, and things of the sort. So could you just explain a bit more for anyone here who would be viewing, just how that works from your perspective as a legislator, and just if people want to hear more, what they need to do to learn the process?
Right. So you need to give me my own hour on this subject, but I'm going to hold this to like 2 minutes.
I understand.
I'm going to do the best that I can.
Thank you.
But it is kind of hard to deal with. So I hear East and West all the time, and I hear people saying that the East End gets the short end of the stick. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. Clearly, we need to do a better job in some areas, but let's be honest. If you look at the facts, right? If you look at where we spend more money per student in Henrico County, we spend more money per student on the East End. We spend more money on students in the East End. We try to create environments in the East End where we got smaller class sizes, we got more support staffs. I know that the Board of Supervisors itself has, out of the last 3 years, given an additional $3 million each year so that we can create those environments, additional staff, additional counselors, dean of students in school, etc. Now, when you're looking at the individual building, up until the last 2 years, all right, September 2018 is when we made a switch, and I'll talk about that switch in a second. But prior to that, the reason that the West End schools have newer buildings is because those are the schools that we built. Up until September 2018, we built schools in Henrico County based upon geographic, population, etc. In the West End, from the Central West to the west of the county, we've got 3 times more people in the West End of the county than we do in the East End. And so if we're basing building schools based upon population, then clearly we aren't building new schools in the East End. We weren't prior to September 2018. Now I'll tell you this and I'll wrap it up. Yesterday, somebody said something to me about equity in the county. And I want to tell you, this is an equity decision, all right? Highland Springs High School, we're building a $100 million Highland Springs High School, right? That's an equity decision. We didn't decide to build that school because we had an overrun of people. All right, now the school was at capacity, but the reason that we built the school was because we realized that we were building new schools in the West End, and that we've not built anything new in the Highland Springs in the eastern part of the county. That was an equity decision, not a geographical population decision. So the county is spending dollars, general government is spending dollars, public schools are spending dollars, but as it relates to building, that was based upon population per capita. We're correcting some of those decisions, and I'm sure Cooper will speak to that. But going forward, we're looking at need versus just population. And so that's the way you kind of create that equity dollar spend in general government. Technically, there's nothing that we can do to spend that, to force that private dollar. And you know, in the West End, there's more people. Businesses want to be where the people are, and they want to be where the money is.
Got you.
Yeah.
Reverend Nelson, thank you. I know we could do an hour of this, right? But I just appreciate you shedding the light that you did. And again, as you mentioned, thank you for standing up the call to action yesterday. Then I want to segue over to our next panelist, Alton. If you are there, yep, is that you? Can you unmute? Alton is one of the student equity ambassadors. And Alton, are you there?
I am here. How are you?
Good to see you.
See you,
Again,
bro.
short time, we'll jump right in. If you can even talk a little bit about what is the Equity Ambassador Program, and also just experiences, because you were through Henrico schools all your education years, right? So if you can kind of talk a little bit about your experiences in the context of what we're dealing with now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me on the call. And the Student Equity Ambassador Program is essentially a program for students who are motivated, driven, and inspired to bring about positive change to their local communities. And student equity ambassadors are tasked with creating those conversations that are uncomfortable. They're tasked with, talking about socioeconomics, talking about race, ethnicity, privilege, so forth and so on, because the uncomfortable conversations have to be had in order for progress to be made. So that's what student equity ambassadors essentially represents. And students are tasked with, a few assignments they feel are, competent to bring to their specific schools. And there's a specific equity ambassador program at each school in Henrico County, and each high school, excuse me, in Henrico County. And each school basically has a couple of projects that they take on, and they implement in their schools to build and create equity.
Awesome.
Also, you asked me about my sort of experience throughout Henrico and how it relates to now. I currently attend the College of William and Mary, and it was not until I got there when I saw that there was definitely a playing field in which I did not feel sort of caught up with. As soon as I got to William and Mary, I saw people, riding around in BMWs to class, and Beamers, and these nice cars, and I was walking to class, so that's how it sort of relates to now, specifically trying to create that resource allocation more, effective and efficient in terms of, resourcing staff and things of that nature.
Okay. And I want to give a shout out to Dr. Mans, who'll be coming on a little bit later, because I know that Equity Ambassador Program came out of her department, and I'm glad to hear that you all are centered at different schools. I'm curious, your experience there, how has it prepared you to be active, to advocate, and to be involved current day?
Absolutely. So the first time I really got open, my mind sort of opened and transpired, was when the death of Trayvon Martin occurred. And I was around 12 years old, and I did not necessarily know the why. Why is someone who could be my cousin? Why is someone who could be my, uncle? Why is someone who could be me being unjustly murdered, for being Black? And I feel that student equity ambassadors creates those conversations and, allow students to have the voice to answer those questions. And it's an amazing program. You get the network, and, I think everybody knows that in the 21st century, networking is essential to anything. But it definitely creates those conversations to get those answers and to understand the why.
Yeah.
Why exactly? Why do I live in this sort of neighborhood while on the other side, of the town, they live in that? You know what I'm saying? So it answers those whys, which is very essential to someone growing up.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Alton, thank you. I think that's a great segue to Dr. May. I know I saw on the call earlier. Monica, are you there?
Yes, I am.
All right. Hey, so you I read your article Sunday, and I think it really spoke the words of a lot of people. It was very profound. And I'll say just thank you. I think we needed to see that, and I appreciated seeing that in a public space. So thank you for doing that. So if you don't mind, I actually want to pull out some of your statements first, Monica, and hear from that. And then I know you have a wealth of things that you've been working on that I'm sure folks here just want to hear more about. In particular, you shared, you said the acts of bias and prejudice are not limited to police. In fact, these same behaviors invade our schools, adversely impacting our students and families. We cannot pretend that these issues do not lie at our doorsteps. Can you just share more about those statements?
So I've been in the education field for 20 plus years. And what I have found is that we are just not immune to these issues of systemic inequities. We are not immune to the issues of biases. I think that many people have good intent, and their good intent is oftentimes harmful. Because if you don't have true understanding and self-reflection behind that good intent, then sometimes you do more harm than good. And so I think that what I see is, I don't think that anyone purposely goes into to harm children, but because they show up with their own biases, their own prejudices, they make decisions in spaces that are harmful to children. They forget to be inclusive in environments that will welcome families in. And so that then begins to erode an already very bare bones social contract that many, as we talk about Black Americans, have with schools. And so, I mean, it's important to us, I think, as a leadership and as a school system, we understand, and we are understanding even more that we have to be intentional about ensuring that our teachers have the skills to self-reflect, and the opportunities to recognize their own biases and how they show up in those spaces. Again, this is not just a Henrico County public HCPS issue. This is a national issue. When I'm looking at these things, I'm not just looking, I'm seeing them to show up in across the nation in every school system. But my concern is what's happening in HCPS, and that we ensure that our staff are getting the training and the support that they need, that they are supporting the good, and that they're doing more than just give attention to good work.
Good.
So yes.
Good. So would you, you know exactly what you said about the work that's happening with staff and teachers. I know just this past week there were some very intentional things. Will you share about some of the work that you're doing?
Sure. I'll talk a little bit and go backwards. When this happened, we were already looking at doing affiliate groups. And affiliate groups are when you bring like people together, or like experiences together, and allow them an opportunity to process and grow. So we crafted 3 different affiliate groups, one for allies, people who want to really stand with the cause of Black Lives Matter. And in that support, we crafted one for Black teachers and staff, and then we crafted one for staff of color to come in and be a part of the conversation. And those 3 different affiliate groups, we had very different conversations. We allowed them to lead and for us to support and follow what their needs were. Some of them were healing spaces because people came in with a tremendous amount of anguish. Yeah. And they needed to process that. Some places were much more like, what are we going to be? Like, what are we doing tomorrow? What's the next steps? And they really were very intentional about that. And so we allowed that to happen. Some places were like, where can we get resources? And how do we support? And so we really then allowed those processes to go on. We are going to be doing a 5-part series with each of those affiliate groups over the summer. And also what came of that is the ask that we run some book clubs to go along with it. So those will be in part and along with that, particularly around the area of anti-bias education. And so we are going to be doing that, both of those things over the summer. And those will probably go into the fall, but we're going to try to just keep it at a 5-time series and do smaller groups. Because as you know, 250 is a lot. We had a pretty large group on some of ours. So we're going to take ours down to smaller groups of 25. So that's what we're doing. Like, that's what we did in the immediacy of the work. We are now also going to be working particularly with our Black affiliate group, as well as an advisory committee. I put an advisory task force I'm putting together to come up with a Black Lives Matter action plan. Because what I've found is that we say, okay, we understand the problem, but I would like to see our Black staff be part of the solution making. So what are your recommendations? What are your innovations about how do we do that? What should be the benchmarks that show that we are actually moving the needle on this? Because what I hear very often is that we're doing lip service to work. And so it is really important that the work that we do is not considered lip service, that there are really clear areas in which we are going to address with really clear benchmarks and expectations that we will follow up on. And so that's one of the things. So again, that's short term, that's in the now, that's in response to what's going on. Some of the other things that we work on, Equity Ambassadors is one of my favorite programs. When I came in, we started those in all the high schools, because I think if you talk about working with students, you need to have student voice in that conversation, because if not, it's somewhat disingenuous. And so again, continuing that work. They're actually going to be running part of their work, since we may not be able to meet in large groups. They're going to have small book clubs where we're going to be doing cross-county work. So the idea is that we really are this one Henrico. So kids are conversating and dialoguing with students that they otherwise would not do it around a book by Jason Reynolds stamp. And so that's something we'll be working on next year. But the goal of the work is I meet with them 4 times a year before, and it was to grow leaders, equity leaders in that work. So that's one of the things that we're doing. We've also I work with the EDAC. I have a larger advisory committee, a community and school-based stakeholder advisory committee. And we put out something we call the Culturally Responsive Education Model Framework. And that's a framework that begins to really work not only on teaching and instructional strategies, but also on curriculum and leadership. And so that was going to be our focus for this year. And so we are still planning to focus on that. We're having to change it based off of kind of how the school is going to look next year. But that still will be a focus, because until we change the curriculum and change the teaching strategies, we can just, again, we're just giving lip service to this broader work. Yeah. And so our goal is to use that framework. There's other programs. Opportunities is now under my house, and so I provide oversight over community learning centers, which are in 3 of our schools, and we're potentially expanding to a 4th one, where we provide services and supports to community outside of school hours. And so that program is developing. And I mean, so again, I don't want to take up too much time. Yeah. If you go to our website, we're updating it, and we'll have more information about many of the things that we're doing.
Awesome. And if someone can drop a link to Monica's page, the equity page, in the chat, that would be great. Equity, I think it's one of those things that just has to live and breathe throughout. And it's deep work. It's a lot of work, not a one-time thing. And so what I think we see in your work is, a building and growing, considering we're dealing with COVID, right? And now we're dealing with, really defending Black lives, what's happening. So just thank you all, and the ambassador, as we heard from earlier, and all the work that y'all are doing. Again, we could have an hour with you too, Monica, but I'm going to jump over to Sharita Bryant, who is here to represent parents and families. Sharita is our president of the Henrico County Council PTA. Sharita, are you there?
I am here. Good afternoon. Well, good evening, everybody. Good evening.
I know. Good evening. I love you got the sign in the background. Sharita, thank you. Thank you for being here. And we know that you're here, you're president of PTA, but I just first want to hear from you as a mom of a sophomore, right? Sophomore here in Henrico. How are you doing in processing the happenings as a parent?
First, I want to say thank you for that, because so often we look at ourselves as volunteers and we think about the work we do, but we never focus on ourselves. So I would like to thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So the recent happenings have me ambivalent. And so we have to do better. As I reflect on our recent tragedies and events, we are now forced to have these uncomfortable conversations. When we say converse, we must listen. So there are so many diverse cultures, backgrounds, and communities speaking, school divisions speaking, and corporate America speaking. We're taking a stance on inequity, racism, and discrimination. My first thought was to say that I'm speechless, right? But in this role, I cannot say that, because I'm here along with everybody else today speaking on behalf of PTA.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. So as you bring up PTA, what's the role of PTAs with regards to advocacy?
So PTA, this is my favorite, statement because it's true. PTA is the largest child advocacy association in the world. So PTA's mission is to make every child's potential a reality by engaging and empowering families and communities to advocate for children. When you think of advocacy, it can be as simple as what we're doing today, and that is supporting and recommending policy. Through your schools, and I'm speaking to those that are on the call today, you are empowered with resources and voices within the county council of PTA. So the local units or each school in Henrico County makes the county council. We, as a county, we are part of the Richmond District PTA, who is a member of the Virginia PTA, and so forth to the national PTA.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I learned something new just in hearing you, right? So explain this to me also. Say if someone is not a member of a PTA, are they still supported? Do they have to be a member to go through that process? Or if they are simply a parent, guardian, family member, can they come to you all if there's a concern or something that they will want support on?
Absolutely. So our slogan and our logo expresses that we support every child with one voice. So PTAs are not able to operate without the schools, right? So we support the schools. Our investment is in the school, and traditionally PTA boards meet with the school leadership teams to plan activities and events that support the school needs. So I'm a parent, and so at my school, I wouldn't know much about Henrico High, go Warriors, without having that relationship with the teachers, with the staff, with our principal. That's our best measure. Again, we support everyone that is in the school.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you. I think my last thing for you, is there a particular, if you had to give a call to action for folks on the call and who's listening, what would that one thing be?
Get involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
I started like 6 years ago, and I started because it was about school uniforms at Harvey Elementary School. Go Heroes. And so we were developing a optional policy of uniforms. And so I spoke up. I wanted to know more, how we could do more. And so after I got involved with the PTA, I learned that I wanted to know, how did the budget work? And I thank you, Reverend Nelson, for explaining that about the additional funds given in the county to the different schools that, in other words, the equity decision, let me say that, because of our population count. So I thank you. I attended those budget meetings, and again, just the one-on-one relationships through PTA. I'd also like to thank Henrico County Public Schools, because we do have a one-on-one relationship with the Family and Community Engagement Office. But I just want to say, get involved. If you're not familiar with your school, or if you don't have a PTA, I encourage you to visit our HCCPTA website. You can follow our HCCPTA meaning Henrico County Council of PTAs, our Facebook account, to learn more about PTA events, or contact us with any questions. And so people like to think of PTA as a fundraising organization, but we are not. We fundraise to support our mission. We are an advocacy association, and we support many facets of child support and development. We have numerous programs, some focus on nutrition, arts, writing, STEAM, STEM, and most exciting, there's grants and funding opportunities to support children in education. So we are in the process right now of nominating our officers for the 2020-2021 school year, and will be soon transitioning positions. So I encourage you to act now, get involved, stay involved, and ask these questions to get answers. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to acknowledge to individuals in the comments. I know I've tried to record too here. If you haven't, I'm going to ask staff to just drop in the link to the Google Doc if you have questions. Surprisingly, we're close to being on time, and we want to make sure we answer a few, but I know I saw Sam and Jennifer and do want to get back to you all. How are you doing, Reverend Cooper?
I'm doing wonderfully well. Thank you for inquiring. Thank you for this forum. It's a phenomenal opportunity for us to dialogue with our constituents, our population, students and teachers and staff. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you also for making time. I know it's It's a lot going on, but you all have really prioritized the conversation. So thank you. My first question to you as our school board chair, you've seen HCPS at various stages as it relates to racism and particularly issues of concern for Black students. Will you just feel free to share what we've done? We'd love to hear just, where the board is. I know you all put out the statement, but what the board is even looking to do, moving forward, considering.
Sure. Well, first, I want to say that we've made progress. I say that from the position of a proud graduate of Henrico High School, a 30-plus year resident of the Fairfield District, the father of 3 African-American sons, all who have attended or are attending Henrico Public Schools right now. So I've seen firsthand the undertone of privilege, the undertone of separation versus equity and equality in the county. And I think that we've come a long way, but that does not negate the fact that we still have a long way to go. I can say on behalf of my peers, each one of them on the board, as well as our superintendent, we were angry, we were saddened by the images of what took place and transpired with Mr. Floyd, and our hearts go out to his family and all victims of police brutality and systematic racism and social injustices. And so, as Supervisor Nelson stated, we felt it was imperative and important for us to use the power of words, which therefore translates into images, and say that Black lives do matter. And we understand trauma, we understand the agony, because every time an African-American person sees another African-American person killed on television, social media, it traumatizes us all, regardless of your gender, regardless of your age. If you are an African-American individual who sees that, we equate that to being lynched publicly, and so that's modern day lynching for us, for those of us who come from this culture.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Thank you. Thank you for that. And you kind of touched on it. What do you think the role of social justice is in educational systems?
Well, sure. So I want to kind of hit that 2 ways. First and foremost, I just want to define the word social justice and the concept. So the definition is justice in terms of the distribution of wealth, opportunities, and privileges within society. And that's why, if you notice, we again believe language is very important, because it therefore speaks to images. Dr. Mann's department is the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Opportunity, because you cannot have social justice without having equitable opportunities. And so when you talk about the distribution of wealth and opportunities and privileges within a society, then you have to bring into the framework and the construct social justice education, which is concerned with achieving equitable and quality education for all children. So that's the goal. The goal is to achieve social justice education, which then impacts and affects social justice in the society, which then helps us to, as we believe at Henrico, trying to ensure that all of our students are life ready, either employed, either enlisted in the armed services, or enrolled in an institution of higher learning. Because the only way to break the cycle of poverty, the only way to deal with systematic racism and social inequities is to prepare our children to be able to have an opportunity to build generational wealth, to have an opportunity to have experiences that allow them to have equitable and equality lives that they live, not only themselves, but for their families as well.
Thank you. Thank you. And, I think for me, it speaks volumes. Of course, I mentioned earlier having a superintendent that's supportive, having a chair on our board who's supportive and is willing to have that kind of dialogue. The one thing, so I hear you're doing a panel tomorrow, correct?
I am hosting a panel tomorrow entitled Policing Our Schools, the Perception of Safety. We have Senator Jennifer McClellan. We have Dr. Will Noel, who's the Director of Student Support and Discipline Review for our school system. Assistant Chief of Police Linda Toney from Henrico County Police, who actually supervises our SROs. Dr. Shedrick McCall, who's a Associate Professor of Psychology at Virginia State, And then the vice chairwoman of Richmond School Board, Ms. Cheryl Burke, is going to participate, because you cannot talk about police brutality and police reform and criminal justice reform without speaking about how that translates into our schools. And so this is an opportunity for us to begin the dialogue, because I guarantee you this is a spark that's going to start a fire that we're going to have to make sure that we look at how we're enacting and how we're dealing with the school to prison pipeline and how it affects and impacts our children.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to ask staff to, if you can, find the info, drop it in the link. We'll be sure to post it on our family and community engagement page too, because again, those are the kind of conversations that we have to have right now. Panelists, I thank each and every one of you all. We do have a few questions that have come in, so I'm just going to put them out there and the appropriate person can respond. I believe earlier Jennifer had a statement when we were talking about just the work of diversity and the training for teachers. And the statement is, it shouldn't just be the staff. There should be some type of exploratory, I said that right? Exploratory class on diversity and inclusion in the schools. You're not born a racist, you're taught hate. The school should create a place for children to learn and appreciate the differences of other children. And I appreciate that comment, Jennifer. Didn't know if panelists wanted to respond to that either way. Monica, if there are certain things that we have done in schools, if you wanted to share, but I did want to lift that up from the comments.
So what I want to say to that is, absolutely, they're correct. I don't know that, I think that there has been some hit and miss things that people have done. I think some teachers have taken it upon themselves to try to engage in those conversations in their schools. Part of the larger CRIM framework actually creates a space where there's going to be training provided to staff on doing that. And then that will allow school leaders, if a school wants to adopt this doing that type of work, that there's going to be opportunities for them to go in and do like classroom checkoffs to make sure that the teachers are doing it correctly. Because again, it goes back to this idea that intent is amazing, but how does it look and how does it show up in the classroom? And so I think there are places where it's being done, but it's really hit or miss, which is concerning. And then there's no oversight of the quality of it, right? Because again, I think a part of this conversation is that we want these conversations to happen, but they have to be productive and they have to not harm, right? And so we want to make sure that teachers are empowered to do it, that school leaders are empowered to do it, that specialists can support the school leaders and the teachers as they do it. So we are ensuring that, apologize.
Okay.
That we are ensuring that these conversations are happening, but in the most progressive and positive way. So what I don't want to do is to negate those efforts that have gone on, because they have gone on, but they have not been, I would say they have not as been supported as I would like them to have been.
Mm-hmm. And I think the opportunity of now is that you're seeing resources that are going out. And I think what's happening now is the pressure is pushing people to make sure that it's incorporated and it's intentional when it comes to, classroom.
Can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
Monica didn't mention this, but both of us actually are serving. And so this is not just a local issue. This is a statewide issue. And so the governor actually put us together, and I can't remember when, maybe July of last year, to begin to look at how African-American history is taught in our schools, how it fits into the curriculums, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So I think that is imperative that we focus on. I saw somebody make a comment earlier about hate is taught. And so I think we need to do a better job of making sure that it is the standard to teach Black history in schools at a greater level than is being taught right now. I don't know if I'm gonna get a chance to speak again, but if we had more time, I want to challenge people to get out there and to check out the Holton report. And Holton, what's the actual title of it is A Review of Equity and Parent Engagement in Special Education
Mm-hmm.
Anna Holton and her team put this report together for our school system, and the school system has been working on it. There's still some things that we need to do better, but we've been working on that for the past 2 years to try to make sure that we're better equitable,
Yes.
focusing on special education. Not perfect, but still trying to make sure we take it. And then the last thing I want to share is this. For all the parents who are listening, one of the questions I've been asking myself, I actually, I was laughing to myself. I was like, who would have ever thought that we have events now where there are more white people holding Black Lives Matter marches and protest groups than there are Black people sometimes. And so if you're on this call, I'm gonna ask you to continue to not just hold up the signs. We appreciate that, to march with us, but to understand the process of the mind needs to change. There's one thing to be out there doing that, but ask yourself, does Black Lives matter that much that if my kid had to go to a school in another area that was a Black school, would I be okay with that? And that's the type of mindset that we need to start, we need to start caring about. If it means that much, then make sure that you are fighting not just for the stuff in your community, because before this pandemic hit, we were tripping, and I hate to go here, but some of these communities were going crazy about lines being drawn so that their kids don't go to certain schools. So this to me is a great time to reset the process, think through whether you actually mean what you're saying, and let's make sure that we create an equitable community.
Thank you. Thank you. Did you want to say something, Monica? I was going to try to jump over to about 2 more questions. Did you have something you wanted to add?
The only thing I wanted to say is that, along with what Mr. Nelson said, or Reverend Nelson said, is that there is a new African American history course coming out. And that's part of the work that my group has been particularly focused on. Please urge your children to sign up, Black or white, because it's really important that they know the history and that other people know the history of Black people. And so I just want to say that because we can't get all of it in the SOLs, but this course is going to allow us to really lay out the history in Virginia and nationwide. So just want to say that part as well.
Okay. Awesome. All right, you all, I'm trying to multitask. All right, another question. I would love for itemized budgets of individual schools to be public and designated in an accessible way for anyone to understand. Sam brought that up earlier. I'm not sure if any of the panelists can speak to that. I'm just kind of putting it out there. And again, I'm asking you all, if you did drop something in the comments, if you can make sure that you fill out the Google form that asks for comments too, because again, that's information we're collecting. So even if we're not able to talk about it now, we'll make sure that it's sent over to leadership and whoever may be able to support the question.
Well, I can speak briefly. So,
okay.
Chris Sorensen is our assistant superintendent for finance.
Yes.
So if there's ever that a constituent or individual wants to know as much as we can drill down per building, we can get data that they ask for.
Okay.
Over 72 facilities, it's kind of hard to make readily available all that information because there's so many different variables that go into the individual expenses of a building, given size, programmatic designation, things of that nature. But anything that we can, we always want to be transparent, and we always want to be forthcoming with data that people want. So please, if you would like, or anyone would like that information, reach out to Chris Sorensen, my assistant superintendent for finance. He'd be more than happy to help to the best of our ability to dilute that information.
Yes, and I think I saw Chris in the meeting earlier, if you're out there, Chris, but we'll make sure that we send that over. Another question, and this is actually for me. I'm going to say yes, but I'll share it here. Several of the children I work with who are from African countries have asked why the people hate them and if the police are going to kill them, and they cry. Does anyone want to help me set up a virtual meeting to help talk with the children and parents? I would love to do that. I copied the question. I feel like the name was Leslie, but I think we could easily set up a space for parents to talk. And I'm also thinking about our partners over at Reestablish Richmond that work very heavily with the immigrant and refugee population as well. So I'm going to ask if someone can even drop my email or something, something in the comments, but I would love to support you with that. You all, I do want to be mindful of time because it's 6:58. I'm going to try to pull at least one more question. And, I think this is something we could talk about for a while. But let me see if I can pull one more question. And sorry, we couldn't get to everyone, but this was one that was also raised. I would like for HCPS to release a more specific breakdown of employee diversity statistics based on job classifications and title from each school with emphasis on those in the West End. I would dare to say, and Chair Cooper, you can respond, but I would dare to say that is information that could be pulled.
Well, let me say this. Is Monica still on the call? Yeah, I see her. So Monica, Dr. Manns and Francine Bolden, our Director of HR, and myself and a few others from her department, we've met, and she is constantly working on recruiting, retaining, and rewarding teachers of color. One of our goals is to have a workforce that reflects the students that we are working with. And so we are working hard to make that a reality. We're very intentional. We're very direct in that. So Monica, briefly, can you add on to what I just said?
You're on mute. Oh. Okay.
So we've been working with Francine Bolden, who is the Chief of Human Resources, and she and I have met right before school let out. We met to come up with the plan. We are going to be doing more reach out to HBCUs. We're going to be doing more reach out and programming, planning for programming to bring in teachers who want to transition into the field, who are kind of career switchers. And we are also working closely with VCU's program. They actually have a program for individuals who are interested in going through education and taking an alternative path. So we have a close relationship with them where we're trying to bring more of those teachers in. One of the things I always have to say is that we are not the only one dog in this fight. We are looking for teachers of color, but so is Richmond City, so is Hanover, so is Chesterfield. And so we really have to create a space where teachers of color, and I say teachers of color, particularly Black teachers, want to come. And the research shows that they like to come where spaces are innovative and that programming is singularly designed for them. And so we are going to be doing some cohort groups to support, again, Black teachers, but also teachers of color. And that's part of the affiliate grouping that we've been doing. And that will be the second component of it when fall starts, where we will have some mentors, some opportunity for particular teachers in the different affiliate groups. Because I think that again, when you're all seeking the same group, you have to stand out and do something different. And so what we're trying to do is to create that space where we're doing something different, but we're also urging schools to be innovative in spaces that also do a lot of work around social justice. Those are spaces that teachers of color and Black teachers particularly want to be in. So the more of those things that we can have going on in our schools, which is following that larger CRIM model I'm talking about, the more time that we're going to get teachers who want to be in those spaces and are excited about being there. So it's not one or, it's and both. And so that's kind of what we've been working on to get more teachers of color into our spaces.
Okay.
Ms. Johnson, can I do a redirect real quick?
Absolutely.
To the question that was raised, it was twofold in regards to funding by school and also staff diversity. I will commit to speaking personally with Dr. Cashwell to see if she can, which I'm sure she can, be able to work to get that posted more publicly. Those two data points.
Okay.
Funding by school and staff diversity. Again, we want to be transparent and we want to be responsive. So, just ask and we'll try to make sure we get that. So I'm going to be held accountable to making sure that she makes that happen. Okay. All right. And we wrote it down. So thank you. You all, it is 7:03. I have enjoyed this hour with you all on so many levels. I think what we showed here is the responsibility of the village, right? Not just the student, not just the family and parents, not just the school and not just the community. It's going to take a collective effort for us to push the needle to where it needs to go.
And hopefully this is a start. You have conversations and you have dialogue, but then you're driven to action. So a few things that we're going to do, I know we've been taking notes. We're going to make sure that we circle back any links. So if you filled out the sign in and if your email was there, by tomorrow, we'll at least send out some of the links and things that were discussed. We also are taking note of the call to actions that came up today, and will hopefully continue throughout the series. We're also committed to, if you dropped in a question, dropped in a concern, and thank you all for participating. I think we had some really worthwhile questions that came up. We'll be sure to take a look at them. I'll be sure to send it over to leadership, and then to send it, make sure that the board has eyes on it too. I think what you have in Henrico right now is leadership that's ready and a community that's ready. And so it's the synergy, that we have. I want to give a special thank you to our panelists, Reverend Cooper, Reverend Nelson, Dr. Mans, Alton, and Mrs. Bryan also, for again being so responsive to answering this call to action, which was being here this evening. The call to go beyond the surface as we seek to change the systems around us. And again, if anyone was at yesterday's call to action, you saw it, you experienced it, and you felt it. My call to us is to continue to cultivate this energy, the type of committed and necessary synergy that we need to eradicate systemic racism. We know this is in our policing policies, and our housing policies, in employment and banking, and in our schools. And so I'll close it out. One of my mentors often talked about the Maasai tribe, a mighty tribe in Africa, full of warriors, known for that. So what was really set with me was their greeting. And they greet each other by saying, "And how are the children?" No hello or no hi. They say, "And how are the children?" Because they know that children are a prized jewel, even as warriors in their community. And so on a good day, you want to be able to say, "And the children are well." And so I challenge us to ask ourselves on a daily basis, are the children well? If they are, great. And if they're not, let us do the work that we need to do to be able to say that honestly and truthfully on a consistent basis. I thank you all so much for being here. Again, I cannot urge you enough. If you have a thought, if you have a comment, please put it in the sheet. We're committed to transparency, and I will say I'm committed to creating transparent dialogue here in HCPS, and also being an office of accountability as we seek to move the needle on a few things. So again, thank you all so much. We are recording this, and so hopefully it'll be up tonight, if not by tomorrow. And again, we will be back for the second series in 2 weeks, 2 Mondays from now, and you'll be seeing advertising and information about that as well. All right. Well, you all, thank you so much. I hope to see you all again.
Thank you, Adrian, for having the conversation.
Absolutely. And I hope to see you all tomorrow at the policing event that Dr. Cooper is hosting. And again, you all have a great evening.
Thank you.